Hello, and welcome to the Beyond Screens Alternative Controller Show. My name is Alistair, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Tatiana.
Hi, hello. In this show, we invite creators of alt-control video games to tell us about their work and show us what they're working on.
So for those of you who may be new to the world of alt control, these are video games made to be played using unusual custom-made controllers. For example, a game could be controlled with a door stopper, or an electric guitar, or maybe even a paper shredder. Or the creator might build a totally new object by soldering together their own electronic components.
And today's guest is Danny Rankin. So Danny is a Colorado-based designer and educator. He designs many things from interactive installations to TED Talk stages, and of course, alternative controller games. And he's also a teacher at the Atlas Institute, which is part of the University of Colorado Boulder. He also co-directs the WAT Lab, and it's a research space for experimental game and interaction design. He makes many things. We're going to talk about all these things today, or some of them. But before we welcome Danny to the stream, let's take a look at one of his projects to give you a feel of his work. This is his last playful installation game. It's called Number Cruncher.
Let's welcome to our stream our guest, Danny Rankin.
Hi, Danny.
Hello.
Hi, Danny. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's so weird to see that video because so much of that game has changed since we took it to GDC and worked on it. Like initially it was just like mining and there's a giant rock, and now it's like wholly anatomical and it has a stomach and like a weird mouth and eyeballs. And yeah, we just kind of, it's good. But yeah, it's going great. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for coming along.
Yeah. So yeah, I was at GDC this year and I witnessed this game. I still have my little mining card. The number 760, I think. Yeah.
It's true. Fine. There's one of a kind.
So yeah, we'll talk about Number Cruncher later, but it's one of the many games you made. But you didn't always make games, so you know a bit about the show, at least what we are gonna ask you. So the whole point of the show is to understand how you ended up making alt control from the start. I mean, from some start, not maybe not from your birth, but unless you want to. But
my first alt control game came out of the womb with me. Yes, it was a game that you played with. You played with the umbilical cord.
The umbilical cord, yeah. Okay, that's really early. Yeah. So in our research, we started in 2009. So not your birth, I assume. Yeah. So as I understood, you started by making a bachelor degree in environmental studies at the
Yeah.
University of Colorado Boulder. How is that possibly linked
Yeah.
to alt control?
So yeah, I was really interested at the time, and still am, but less professionally now, about building technology for small scale farmers to monitor things in fields and crops. And I was working, or starting to work, on a farm at that time. I worked on a small organic farm for a while. And we had all of these problems with animals escaping or not being able to monitor things in other fields. So I started to get into tinkering with electronics and circuits then, as it sort of tied into some sustainable agricultural research. And that brought me into this place where I now work, which is called the Atlas Institute. So a lot of those things are connected, but basically I ended up here. And initially, I did my undergraduate environmental studies, and did sort of a thesis project about open agricultural technology. And I started playing around in this hackerspace, makerspace, which is here, called the BTU lab, called the Blow Things Up lab, they call it, which I've been really active with ever since then. But that's a space where a lot of people were making really surprising and weird and playful installations and games, and you know, sticking LEDs and knobs on everything and seeing what you can make them do. And from there, I started a graduate program in the same place called Creative Technology and Design. And I met Matt Bethencourt, who kind of does work under the name Mouse and the Billionaire. And Matt is also just a great game designer developer, and he and I started to collaborate together. And it just sort of was a natural fit that we were interested in making kind of weird games that didn't feel like traditional video games. We wanted to use games to, you know, make people laugh and kind of talk about social commentary, and not fully a serious way, but just sort of in a fun way. And we started brainstorming, and right away we started collaborating on projects. And the first project we did together was this game called Busywork, which is like an office simulation immersion space. And I did all of the hardware design for that. And it was sort of, I was already making little circuits and stuff, so it was easy for me to say, like, okay, well, let's turn all these phones and keyboards and monitors and staplers into game controllers and make it into this thing. So yeah, that's kind of the journey there.
It's interesting because when we researched your games and portfolio, it looks like from I'd say 2015 to 2017, you made very experiency stuff, not necessarily games, more experimental art installations.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe let's start by this to understand how things evolved, because the first one we saw on your website is Lightness, and it looks inspired by environmental studies.
Sure.
So Lightness, or maybe you can tell us about Lightness.
For sure, yeah. So Lightness was a kind of the first, or one of a couple of initial interactive projects that I was trying to build. So basically this idea of like, just nature in terms of if people are getting closer to it. And it was really simple. It's just like a nest that has sort of this light up egg and this little chirping box inside of it. And it uses a Kinect to keep track of a person's proximity to the installation. And if people get close to it, then it kind of eventually gets quiet. And if people are far away from it, then it sort of makes noise, and kind of a loose commentary on, you know, people sort of ruining nature by interacting with it too much. Which was something I was, you know, interested in. And the big concept was just that, right? Just sort of like, does it keep track of it? So it's roughly playful. And it was something that I noticed. I mean, there's some stuff in that video of like, you know, my kids jumping around and playing with it, and putting something out that you sort of put into a public space and observe people's behavior of it became something that was really fascinating for me. And that made its way into Busywork as well. That this, like, you know, it's fun to play a game. It's almost as fun, or if you can do it right, it's more fun to watch someone play one of these games. And that is something that I think is really fascinating about alternative controls, right? Is it's almost as much about the spectacle of what you can make somebody do, and it becomes an act or performance that other people are observing, rather than just a game for the person themselves playing it. And that is a big element of what I like about, yeah, some of those early installations were very much that.
Yeah,
And that's also some of my background. I mean, yeah.
I'm just curious, like, what kind of interactions did you observe with the light nest?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just the way people assume, and what's funny about that installation is it really worked really poorly, right? It didn't really keep track of proximity that well, so I ended up kind of manually adjusting it and sort of controlling it off to the side just to see if I could get different interactions. So people weren't sure. I didn't specify the interactions. They weren't sure if they got really quiet or if they were really, really like gentle with it, or if they like actively did it. And we had some people that like agitated it because we didn't tell them not to touch it, which was fine. And yeah, you sort of, when you leave some ambiguity there, typically in game design, you know, when I teach game design, we're trying to talk about like not leaving too much ambiguity for the player or leaving it in the right spaces. But I think with this kind of work, you can say like, all right, let's not tell anybody how they're supposed to interact with this thing and just sort of see what happens. And in that case, right, the noises are sort of foreign and odd, and the lights are sort of reacting, and you're not sure if you're doing it right or wrong. So yeah, people would sort of go up and dance around it, and a lot of people just look at things like that in the context of an exhibition, and they're like, yeah, I'm not going to mess with that. I don't know what that is. So there's also this sort of observer effect that a person has to sort of cross a bridge to say, okay, I'm going to interact with this thing. And I mean, I think that's true a lot of the kind of, you know, alt control games. You have it set up, you're at, say, a conference or something, and people are walking around and observing from the distance, and then they decide finally inside, they go, all right, I'm ready to come up to this thing and talk to a person and touch this object. And that's always rewarding to see too, because, you know, who knows what it is that makes people make that decision.
It's interesting that your first works were very like commentary on stuff, and you didn't need to be willing to interact, especially with lightness. Like you interact with the piece, whether you like it or not. Like if you approach it, you interact with it, which is not very gamey for an installation from an ergonomics point of view. It's not the kind of stuff we're usually looking for as game designers. That's one of the lines maybe between art installations and games. And yet there are some games that are playing with this ambiguity, definitely.
For sure.
And we can feel in these 2 years between 2015 and 2017 that there are some experimentations on your part going on, moving forward. I'm thinking of honest work, for example, where I don't know. First question. So we will explain to the audience what is busy work soon, I promise. But
no, it's fine.
because we are talking about this game, but it's not clear yet. But it will be in like 10 minutes, I promise. But first question, is busy work coming from honest work? Like, because the name is so similar, and also it feels like it's an evolution of it. So
I think that in some ways, I have a fascination with the intersection between labor and play, right? Can you play with games that feel like work, or interactions that are meant to be laborious, or sort of I shy away from wanting to say I'm making a commentary on something, because I don't have very well-formed opinions about most stuff. I'm kind of an idiot when it comes to a lot of that. But I do think that there's something there when you're talking about like people doing work and it also being a game, or it also being something you're supposed to, in the case of honest work, not a game, but like it's in an art gallery, it's meant to sort of feel like a reflection on telepresence, right? The idea that you could like investigate what farm work would be like without actually having to get your hands dirty. So in some ways, yeah, there's probably a connection. It's I don't think conscious. The names are similar, but ultimately, yeah, the big thing behind that is more that it's yeah, just how do you make things feel playful or curious, or you know, kind of artistic or beautiful, and also have them be about mundane things, or things that feel very kind of like labor intense, things that, especially in a capitalistic sense, like, you know, things that labor that people don't get a lot of pleasure out of, be it agricultural or office work, or, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So just quickly for the audience, what you are seeing right now is honest work. So players or visitors, they plunge their hands into a box of sterilized styrofoam peanuts. That's what was written on the website,
Yeah,
at least.
that's
I
right. Yeah.
didn't try it. And you have hands, robotic hands, that were diving into buckets of murky water, and yeah, this is why it's like a sterilized experience of uh, working with nature, agrotourism, and stuff like this. And what I was about to say is that the relationship to work is something that we see a lot in going on in your portfolio. The second one is a lot of your work, you take environment, but as a concept, a lot into consideration. A lot of people in altctrl come from video games, so they think in terms of a video game experience enhanced by a controller. That's weird. And it's not just about coming from art installation. Like the same year you made honest work, you made quantified self, and it was a theater experience. And it's yet another environment with lightness. We had nature and injection of artificial digital stuff in it. In honest work, it's art gallery. In quantified self, is it's theater. It feels like it's always an experimentation with a new environment and what you can say and do with it. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just my perspective on this. Maybe I'm wrong. I
No,
don't
I
know.
mean, that's awesome. I appreciate that you have more of an insight in my work probably than I do. Uh,
That's not.
no, that's yeah. With quantified self, it is also that, right? There's an element, and it's hard. The documentation of that is pretty inadequate, but yeah, that the whole idea of that was it's an immersive theater presentation where the cast and the audience are in the same space together, and the whole thing is actually a house that's been created by a technology company that borrows your personal information and then uses it to curate your experience. So what we did in that space, yeah, there's not much documentation of a lot of what it is, but people would walk in and they would have before the show given all of their given access to their social media to the production team of the play. And then basically we would pull all of their data in and they would come in with an RFID bracelet that they scanned at different installations. And they would basically, news would change and the dialogue would change. And there were games in the space actually that I kind of helped design, but I didn't actually do much of the programming on those because I wasn't even thinking about them at that time. But a lot of these sort of just like interactive light sculptures and these things that when you would scan something simple, just like the color of the lighting of a particular area would change or modify. And the whole thing was just meant as a space where people could sort of, yeah, that thing's like a branch that divider that would change light and react to people's presence. But the actual play was about data mining and privacy and the use of information without people's consent. So yeah, it's kind of it was a weird project. And yeah, I got brought on because of a lot of the like environmental, natural art design that I had been doing. So all of the pieces in there were all meant. And yeah, I did a lot of stuff that's not in the documentation as well, of like walls that have plants in them, and there's a lot of vegetation stuff in there. It was an interesting project, and the people that actually put together the actual writing and the play, we still kind of talk a lot about that just because it was a very much an experiment that showed us kind of what the limits of what we could do in terms of immersive design were with what we had. We had like almost no money and very little time. But yeah, the idea of making an immersive experience that people walked into and using, yeah, the kind of theatricality of it was something that, yeah, in hindsight plays a big role in what I like to think about inside of the work that I do.
Yeah, that seems, I mean, again, maybe it's just my interpretation, but I understand when you say like you feel like you don't have big things to say, but I think it also comes from the approach you had and still have, that it feels like it's going to be hard to say in my third language, but it looks a lot like what you're doing is just having one not thing to say, but showing the inside of a system in the abstract sense by highlighting one of its way of working. So in honest work, you're in the art gallery, so you use this frame, experience frame of art gallery, this place where you look at things at a distance, and you use that to say one thing, like sterilized agrotourism, etc. So honestly, like when I did my research, we talked about at the GDC, but I didn't know like your work was so profound, and it was really fun to do the researches.
Thank you.
And just not a compliment, just
No.
what I'm thinking. So, well, not the opposite too, obviously.
No.
But yeah, I mean, even in the Internet of Tubes, there is this idea of just showing the inside of a system and part of its working, to think about it in a different way using an environmental approach, a way of staging stuff. So I don't know, it was my interpretation, and I'm really enjoying your works.
Great. Well, thank you. Yeah, no, a lot of the projects, I mean, on one hand, yeah, that's a big part of it. The Internet of Tubes is a good example of like, really, it was just a stupid joke. We were just sitting around and we were talking about, there's this American politician who made this kind of famous quote back in the day. His name is Ted Stevens, and he basically was trying to describe the internet, and he described it as a series of tubes. And one day, a few of us that work in the BTU lab were just musing on that. And I said, what if we actually just made like an internet out of pneumatic tubes? Because pneumatic tubes are fun. And yeah, basically designed this system where you shoot these ping pong balls through a network of tubes that connected through the office. And then there's like a color sorting box in the middle that detects the color of the first ball and then just sends them on their way. And I did this as sort of part of a thesis for graduate work, but in some ways it was all about just taking a joke too far, and then kind of backfilling the theoretical underpinnings. We were like, oh yes, this could be used as an educational tool to talk about how the internet works. But really, we just thought it would be a funny interaction that people could get a kick out of. And yeah, that one stayed in the ceiling of that space for a couple of years, shooting ping pong balls all over people as it would break in various ways. But yeah.
So was that something was that something that the public got to access, or was this like a kind of secret thing that only members of faculty knew about?
No, it was just there in the room for a long time, and you could just walk in there and just turn it on. And if you didn't know how to do it, you would literally, if the system didn't recognize the colored ball that went through first, it would just eject all of them all over the room. So the room eventually just got completely covered in like random, table tennis balls that would end up under the furniture. And yeah, at a certain point, the lab director was like, hey, can you turn that off so that stops happening? People have classes in that room, and like ping pong balls would shoot out of the ceiling and people would get really distracted. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I still have it. Maybe when we walk around, I'll show you the guts of it are still in the closet.
Oh, please do.
All of the tubes are in a big pile with all of the sorting mechanics and stuff. Yeah.
I find the approach of taking a joke too far actually working remarkably with my students. I say about my last game, PBB, that it's a glorified meme. And honestly, it is like, we were going for something super complicated, and we ended up with this weird foosball, like surrealist foosball game. And it's one of my funniest games. So again, I think it's a fun way to approach stuff, but actually there is something behind this, like maybe at a subconscious level, but that it's a design approach that consists of aiming for something specific in a system and just using that to make a game from it. I love the idea. But
right, no, there's something about absurdity that is really fun to just explore as a game mechanic, right? You just sort of say like, well, whimsy, right? What does it feel to be silly or kind of strange? And that in itself will bridge the gap into getting somebody to want to play or to immerse themselves in play that much more. If it's too familiar, then maybe they'll be a little bit uneasy about it. But if it's really, really weird, and I mean, I think that's true just in how I like to relate to people, right? Like, you can get a lot farther with people by making them laugh or making them feel at ease than you can by immediately engaging them on a serious topic or something like that. So yeah.
And using the absurdity to highlight something that it became so obvious that people don't see it anymore is actually a really powerful tool. And well, this is what how I would describe busy work from what I've seen from it, the idea of taking things too far, but not that far actually. And it shows for some people, yeah, maybe let's tell the audience what busy work is about. So do you want to go, Danny? Yeah.
Sure, I can talk about it. Yeah, so BusyWork's an immersive office work simulator, basically, where players are sitting at actual desks and cubicles, and they have, you know, monitors, and it's styled in this in the way of it, like a late 90s, early 2000s office, where people have to send as many emails as possible in order to win. So the game is competitive. Everybody is typing as fast as possible, but the emails complete themselves. All you have to do is smash the keys as fast as you possibly can. And if you do that, then the emails can compose themselves, and then you send them, and then you do that. And the whole idea is to force people to race to send a lot of emails, and then someone wins Employee of the Day, which really means nothing, but they get to experience that. And in the midst of it, there are tasks that they have to do. They have to take files and put them away into a folder, and they have to shred paper. And you know, either Matt or I typically walk around as the manager of the space, yelling at people and giving them things to do and sort of interrupting their work. And all of this takes place over the course of about a 3-minute play session. So the experience is very fast and very chaotic, and it definitely lends itself to sort of an absurdist spectacle. But also inside of the game, there's embedded narrative. All of the people that you're sitting at the desk of have a persona. They all have kind of artifacts of their life all over their desk. If you wanted to, you could just not play the game and sit there. We literally had a time when someone just sat down at the thing, decided they didn't want to type the emails, and we had like an old Discman with CDs, and they just put a CD in the disc. They were listening to like old Rage Against the Machine CDs and just watching. And like, there's a little version of Solitaire that we programmed that Matt made called Pine Scooper. It's like a cat poop litter box Minesweeper clone. And you could just sit there and do that the whole time if you want. So in some ways, we tried to design a lot of pathways to experience for people. So as much as it is this crazy absurdist chaos simulator that stresses people out, there's a lot that goes into the sort of dressing of the game, which most people don't realize because they're too busy smashing out emails, which by design is, I guess, commentary in itself. But yeah. Busy Work was the first game where we really like found, I think, what we really wanted to be doing.
You told me at the GDC that for some people this game hits too close from home, like it feels a bit too real. I don't know if it can induce some anxiety into people, but
yeah, a lot of people would watch it and just sort of go, no, that was actually my life for years, so I'm not going to play that game. And be like, that's fine, you can just watch. And you know, that was the other place where we really had a game that more people would be gathering around and videoing it with their phone and sort of observing it than were playing it. Like, it really became a huge spectacle. And all we did was take it to conferences. I mean, I think that video is all just, you know, it's IndieCade and IndieCade EU and XOXO Festival and a few other places. And it's just,
yeah, you won the Media Choice Award at IndieCade, the IndieCade Media Choice Award in 2017.
Yeah, in 2017. Yeah.
Is it the first time that you used phones in your work with Matt?
I'm trying to think. I think the other one we did was this game called Please Hold, which was more contemplative. And I think we were doing them about the same time. But yeah, I would say probably it was the first time I'd used phones. And I mean, I just looked over there because I'm looking at a bunch of shelves that have boxes of old dead projects in them, and they're almost all full of dead phones. I have so many phones. We were talking about earlier, I actually don't have the phones for the game that we're running before by Sal. He has them at his house, but there are so many just broken phones around here of various kinds that are wired into different things. And I don't know why I was fascinated by that, but there's something about the hardware that just, I still love it. I don't know. Do you all have weird things that you're just like, oh, I just love these weird old objects, right? For me, it's phones. I just love old, wired telephones. There's something about them. So I have kind of a collection of those. And getting to use that was a big part of it. So I think that's probably where it started. And yeah, for whatever reason, we were on the phone thing for 3 games there, I think.
Yeah. So based on our researches, please hold. All I can tell is that the video on Vimeo was put online after the one of Busy
Yeah,
Work.
I think it
So
was
I
after.
assume it was done right after it. So yeah, you have this thing with vintage phones that you explored. You explored a bunch of interactions with it. Maybe we can talk about Please Hold, but it's more of a narrative experience,
Yeah.
I'd say. Well, again, I'll let you explain the game.
Oh no, yeah, it's we were playing with the idea of being on hold, right? And the sort of automated hold systems where you have to navigate through a series of numerical menus and do that. And yeah, I think that with that game, we never really got it as far as we wanted to. I think that's really more of like a proof of concept of what we had envisioned, which was a whole series of audio-based games that you navigated solely through a telephone handset. So, and Matt is very much fascinated in this space too. He's developing one of the games that's being built in the lab right now is a voice-controlled game. One of my students' games that was at GDC that you saw, Plinko Burger. That one's a voice-controlled game. We really like this. Like, what does it mean to use, not just an alternative controller like a toilet or a weird furry monster, but just your voice. And what does it mean to take advantage of kind of the natural language processing that is really kind of getting a lot better these days, and use that as a game controller. So yeah, we definitely with Please Hold, it was just about experiencing sort of generative audio and this telling this thing how you felt, and then it would sort of like change the music and the sound. And we had envisioned this whole thing where we're like, let's build phones and then people can buy them and put them in their houses, and then like the phone will ring and there'll be a new game for them to play. And we have big ambitions for that maybe someday we would try and undertake. But in the meantime, we kind of just tried that one, and that was the first time we actually made a phone into a phone. So with Buy Sell, the phone really just honestly you picked it up, yelled a thing, and hung up, and it didn't do anything.
Busy Work. With
Busy Work. Yeah. And then with sorry, there's so many names. And then with Please Hold, I had to open the phone up, make it stop being a phone for a phone system, and then turn it into a video game phone instead. Which is a fun project.
Many things in what you say are interesting. So maybe I'd say the business part is something that comes a lot in alternative controller games, and how much people feel like doing stuff that are not related to making games, basically, and making controllers. If you feel like doing business, you can do stuff, but you will find yourself quickly spending 80% of your time doing stuff that are not related to what attracted you to this in the first place. So but something that I was questioning myself, like I really like vintage phone, and I was wondering why. And I was thinking about what you were saying about the sound, the voice control stuff. So there are many things in alt control, especially if you look at them as installations, environments, and a controller. As a controller, what kind of interactions you have. The thing is, with vintage phone, you have a way to involve people that is very different from a cell phone, which has many possibilities. It's limited, so finding something new to do with it, both for the designer and the player, is interesting because it feels like it's very limited. I was thinking about this game at the GDC based on teletext. So for the American looking at this, usually teletext is more known in Europe, but you play with a remote, like TV remote, and you can enter a series of numbers, of digits, and it will bring you to one channel, and so you can play like choose your own adventure games with it. And I think phones, especially vintage phones, you have the same limitations that makes it super rewarding to find something new with it, because you don't expect that. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I also think that there's something about the kind of nostalgic familiarity of that, or the physical feel of the plastic of a phone, right? That it just feels like you're touching an artifact from another time, and that puts your mind in a space. There's so much in video games is focused on just audiovisual, right? And especially on visuals, right? The primary thing that we think about is like, how good are the graphics of a video game? But can you think about all of the other sensory avenues that are kind of available to a player? And yeah, with an old phone, you're immediately taking away what people expect. If the game has no screen, right? All of a sudden you're going like, all right, well then what is this? If it's not I mean, we use the word video game, right? It doesn't even have video. Is it a video game? No, but it's some sort of digital game. It uses a computer. And at the same time, the things that you feel and touch and the tactile nature of it and the kind of nostalgic emotional appeal and, you know, the visuals of the object you're looking at and what that brings out in you. It's the same reason that I think so many, especially indie developers, use, you know, pixelated graphics as the sort of appeal to a deeper, more visceral memory response that you can get somebody into a play space without them even realizing it. And then you can start to work on what that experience becomes. So yeah, using nostalgic objects, I think, can be very powerful or potent. I think, Alistair, you know, I mean, I think about book ritual too, right? It's so much about that, like, take a thing that actually means something to you, but there's something to the physicality of that.
Yeah.
Right. That's like a huge part of why people emotionally or psychologically connect to the experience of it, because it's just you're feeling something with your hands.
Totally, yeah. And I think there's another interesting thing I was just thinking about there as you were talking about the telephone as an object, it is quite a strange object. You know, you've got, like, if it's a rotary phone, you've got this sort of strange, complicated looking dial thing. Otherwise, you've got 12 buttons, and then you've got the things on top, because if you rest the handset on it, which is a really weird kind of button, which is not a button that you're meant to press, but a button that you are meant to rest something on and leave it there. And of course, while you're using the telephone for its normal purpose, you're not meant to interact with any of these things. In fact, if you interact with any of these things, then it doesn't work properly. And it's such a, you know, from that perspective, it's a really odd piece of technology.
For sure. Yeah, it's just a gateway, right? It's just a door, right? You don't really think of it as anything but like something that you unlock and step through, or in the case of a phone, you know, a thing that you call. But we've changed the whole notion of that to this like computer that you do everything with, as opposed to this sort of gateway to another world. Although it really hasn't changed, I suppose, in a way. You know, that little screen is just a gateway into all of the places that it takes you, or takes your data to, or whatever. But yeah, for sure, it's an interesting subversion of what that thing can do to make it into a more playful object as well. And yeah, mostly people hate sitting on hold, right, and navigating numerical menus in a robotic voice. And yeah, it's a space I'd still love to revisit, because I think as those systems get better, right, when you think about like what natural voice can do with a lot of computer assisted, you know, speech processing, you know, eventually those hold menus will be undistinguishable probably from a person on the other end of the line. And then it will become almost nostalgic to play a game that has a robotic sounding voice and that you only interact with through numerical button presses. Like, it won't be a contemporary commentary, it'll be a nostalgic commentary at that point. Yeah.
I was thinking about this intimacy stuff, and the fact that it's more like a tool that you're using to do something. Of course, it feels more welcoming too, in the sense that a full digital environment, you're always foreign to that. So a smartphone has its whole complicated way of working, and it's kind of overwhelming. When we are used to it, we accept that there are a lot of things that we don't understand. We just try to figure a way to do what we want to do. But when I use internet, I'm not thinking about everything that's happening between me and what I'm seeing on my screen. I just try to figure it out. And it brings back to something more, something simpler, that actually participate in the intimacy, I think, too. because you're just alone with this piece of plastic, and it's enigmatic, but in a way that can be understood, I think. And actually, as a designer, I love these phones because my first the first appeal to me is to open them and try to understand them. Well, when I use a game engine, I'm not trying to understand everything. I'm just trying to do whatever I want to end up with. Here, there is this idea of exploration, because I feel like I can try to understand it all, or at least close to all of it. I don't know. I think there is this riddle appeal to it that comes with the simplicity too. But yeah.
No, I completely agree. That's well said. Yeah.
But yeah, I love phones. And let's talk about the last game you made with phones, to the extent of my knowledge, of course,
So.
which was at the GDC too. So many games at the GDC this year.
Yeah, we really went for it this year. We're like, let's bring them all, because we had applied to bring that game to GDC in, I guess, 2020, and it had been accepted for altctrl. And then obviously, I don't know if you guys heard about this thing that happened, but yeah, everything got really interrupted for a few years there. So yeah, when they made the call again, we asked, and they were like, yeah, you should just resubmit it. I said, okay. So.
And this game is buy sell.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is that there are pretty much a bit of everything we said, maybe not everything, but a lot of things we said so far in buy sell. This idea of using absurdity to bring work to its essence, but in a way that makes it playful. I remember Matt calling that, saying about it that Matt, the other designer with whom you made the game, he said it's a children take on what stock trading is. And it makes, it's exactly this. And it uses phones in a very simple way. But yeah, maybe you can talk about the game and explain how it works.
Yeah, we basically started from a place, like busy work is sort of like if you asked a kid what offices are like, and buy sell is like if you asked a child, what do you think the stock market is like? And both Matt and I have kids, and we asked them, and they're like, yeah, people yell and buy things. And we're like, what do you think they buy? And they're like, gold, pizza. We're like, yep, that's definitely what they buy. Just gold and pizza, apples. So like the stocks that you trade in the game are like wishes and apples and tacos and
moms.
Just moms. Yeah, right. Yeah. And the whole idea of it is just like, once again, could we design a game that feels like a spectacle? Could we design a game that as people play it, people are like, what's happening over there? When we initially debuted that game years back to try and show that off, we had this idea that maybe people would wear these, like we brought a bunch of like sport coats, like blazers that people could wear, and like neckties that they could wear, and big glasses like in the 80s. And nobody wore them. People were like, no, I'm not going to do that. People were not ready to immerse themselves fully in costume yet. But yeah, the whole notion was abstract stock trading down to its most ridiculous and silly elements, and then just make a game out of that. And yeah, the way that kids maybe interpret things, I mean, we can track the work that we're talking about, if we're talking about my work, also across like me reproducing and having like more small humans in my life. So yeah, like, around the time we did the first one, I think we had our first, and by now I have two. I have a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they're no end to the amount of inspiration and frustration that they can give you, but they're mostly like asking really bizarre and hilarious questions. And if you want, you can use a lot of those for game ideas. So I normally don't recommend people have kids, even though I love my kids. But if you're looking for inspiration for game ideas, I guess.
Let's be pragmatic here. Okay? You can use your kids for your work if you're a designer.
Okay. There is a reason. Yeah. No.
Okay, maybe you saved like people from we have like demographic decrease right now, so maybe you found
Yeah,
the solution. Yeah.
I did it. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, either way, if you're looking for a reason and you're on the fence about it, don't let that be the reason. But yeah. Uh,
Or be
well, yeah.
crazy, but I mean, it's at your own risks.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely right.
so it begs the question, how do you think your kids or kids could see your work if you had to like essentialize it? I would call it essentialization, because like if we go full academic here, it's basically like bringing something to the core to the point it's almost absurd, but it's the main features of it. So what would kids say about your work?
I think that mostly kids probably think of it just as like silly um fun, right? Or sort of like um kind of like weird chaotic energy. I think Number Cruncher is a good example, but with all of the games, we always have our kids try the games. And they never have some sort of commentary they come away. They're never like, oh, this gave me a nice idea of like the absurdity of how marketplaces take, or like, oh, this is a noteworthy, idea on the mining of cryptocurrency. My kids just go like, oh, the fat belly game where you punch the monster. I'm like, yeah, that's the one, right? Um, and maybe to a degree, the essentialist delivery of these games is that I have to cope with all of the stresses of life through the production of absurdity, right? That like the absurd is, in essence, one of the only coping mechanisms that people have with the troubling difficulties of existential life, right? That like when you think about what it means to be a person, it can be very overwhelming and painful. And you think about work, or you think about labor, or you think about money. Yeah, my mechanism for dealing with them is just make weird, funny things. And that's probably at the core of all of it, is just like, well, if you can't necessarily change any of this, the least that you can do is have a little fun with it, and laugh at its expense.
And it makes for great games.
No, thanks. Yeah, it's so far the games have been a great way to kind of think about and talk about and just sort of experience life in that way. So I'm glad that I've found games as a place to do that, because for me it's like I didn't think that I would be making games. Even if you'd asked me 5 or 10 years ago, I definitely would have said I've been doing something more serious. And now I'm like, it's not that I don't still have interest in those serious things, but I definitely I found that games are a great way to kind of just let out some of those inexpressible feelings. Process, I try and tell my students too, like, it's not great to try and make a game that does something, right? When people try and make an educational game, they're like, I'm going to make a game that teaches people about something. Yeah, you have mixed results, because the more you try and force the end result, the less play there is involved. But you can teach people things by having them make games, and making games is in essence absolutely an educational and enriching experience for people, and it can teach you a lot about who you want to be and who you are, if you let it.
It's complex enough for people to express in many ways. So tackling the meaninglessness of thing and the absurdity is one way to approach this. Other people can approach it in another way. And while we are talking about education and teaching, you are not only making games, as you said, you're also helping students make some, and especially alternative control games, playful installations, and so on. And you're, we said it at the beginning, you are co-directing the What Lab, which is pronouns, I think, What Lab, something like this.
Yeah, what?
But so this is going to be hard, but yeah. And so you have a festival, an alternative controller festival, to put it simply, which is also called the What Festival?
What Festival? Yeah, got it.
It's going to be hard to stay serious. So yeah, the What Festival. And so when did you start teaching alternative controller games and playful installations?
I guess so. Yeah, we started the festival, I guess, 4 years ago now. We initially called it ALT+CTRL, but then we found out that name was taken. So yeah, we came up with this whole what thing, which has been really fun. And yeah, it's about that time that we started thinking like maybe the games that we're making, students could also be starting to explore this space. So we started a class here, I think, 3 years ago around alternative arcade interfaces that, we've been running in different forms for a while. And a lot of the time those games ideally get shown at the sort of small festival that we run here in Colorado. And this last year, we probably had the most focus on that. Last fall, we had 3 projects came out, and one of them is Plinko Burger, which was at GDC that you saw, and a couple of one was like you ride a mechanical horse while trying to tattoo a mannequin based on a reference image, and you'd like try and tattoo this thing that's shaking around, and then you just use computer vision to compare your reference image to the tattoo that you put on it. Totally absurd, like really, really. And they made it out of like an old dryer motor and a bicycle that they disassembled. And I mean, it ended up being more of a mechanical engineering project than a game design project, because they just were trying to make a machine that could shake a human being back and forth. And they ended up doing a lot of,
That's hard, actually. Usually when my students start telling me about moving people, basically moving a chair with pumps. So I won't have the vocabulary in English for this, but everything that involves having a load that is really like, we are talking several pounds. I mean, I'm always, unless there are engineers, which can happen, but usually there are designers or programmers. I'm usually trying to like not break their enthusiasm, but try to make it like differently. Like maybe someone is hiding behind the couch and shaking it or something like this. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, same. But yeah, this one was fun. It worked for about 45 minutes and then it broke. So
pretty good.
Not bad. All things considered.
Not bad. Yeah. I mean, it worked. It's already surprising. But yeah, how did you end up teaching? Did you stumble upon teaching, or was it something more vocational?
I was in grad school here at Atlas in this creative technology program, and I started teaching because I worked as a freelance graphic designer for a long time, kind of as a side gig. And I was teaching graphic design here, and then I started making games with Matt, and we started the festival. And they basically said, hey, if you're into games, then we'd love to have more games classes in our program. And because I work in a really cool place, they basically just kept saying yes every time. I'd be like, how about we teach a class about little tiny games where we play little Pico 8 games and program those things? And they're like, great, sounds good. And I'm like, what if we did a class on alternative controllers? And they're like, yeah, great, teach it. So I'm really fortunate that I get to work in a place where my bosses are sort of like, if you think you can teach that and students will sign up for it, you can do it. And then after doing that for a few years, they invited me to join the faculty full time. So I've just kind of been here working for, I guess, the last, overall, like probably 6 or 7, 8 years, but full time for about 4 years now.
So
and it's a virtuous. Yeah, sorry.
No, I was just wondering, like,
I'm talking.
No. It's not a problem at all. But like, and I guess you can answer this yourself, Tatiana. Like, as in for yourself. I got tongue-tied there. Anyway, the question I was going to ask was, how do you go about teaching alternative controllers? And hence why it's a relevant question for Tatiana as well.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I basically do, and I think that I would change this. I almost maybe give them a little too much freedom to start out with, but we have them do Pong. So I make sure that they can program a version of Pong in whatever platform they want to program it in. And then I have them create some version of an alternative control for that. And that's run the gamut from a seesaw to a lightsaber to a 15-foot piece of wood with switches all over it, to all sorts of different things, pairs of scissors, and we start there, and then kind of have them just pitch what they think the best game might be, and how we can make a game that fits a spectacle. And we usually give them a theme. So this year the theme was carnival themed, because that was one thing that we were really interested in, is the sort of like redemption games where people are sort of putting in a token and getting tickets if they do it right, and the game is kind of a scam. And that just sort of morphs and evolves. But overall, yeah, I just try to point them to a lot of inspiration. I make them go and play a lot of other games. I make them watch a lot of videos about other games. And then after that, I pretty much just project manage them for a couple months, and just make sure that they can find the parts and resources and tools they need, and that they're staying inside of the scope and hitting their kind of goals. So it's a lot less like an active instruction model for that class, and it's much more like a studio where the students are sort of running it themselves, and I'm just sort of helping to connect them to resources, which has been for the most part successful. But it depends, obviously. Different students need different amounts of support.
It's always a very case-by-case job at some point. But yeah, so from my experience, what you are doing with your students is working well. And I suspect that's why, but I need to explain something in 2 minutes. I know it's already an hour. Time is going so fast. But anyway, when I started teaching, because I'm using my students as guinea pigs, they know it, so that's okay, for my design theory, because basically what I'm doing in my PhD is alternative controller game design frameworks, specialized for alternative controllers, nothing universal, but at least some that are working. And at the beginning, I let too much freedom to my students, so I had the same problem. The problem is I went nuclear with this and went the complete opposite. So I tackled alternative controllers by the basically my take on this. It's what I said at GDC 2018, is that we can think about alternative controller games as games where the controllers are not thought through design with ergonomics in mind. And instead, we can use the controllers to provide challenges, which works, but it's limited. So it works because then you can apply game design framework based on challenges like rational game design and stuff like this to your controller, like it's just another part of the game. The problem is it works with, I'd say, 60% of all control games that are on check that button, for example. It doesn't take into account what's something that I used since last year, that's 2 years, sorry, that's working very well. And I only understood why when playing by cell. So this is why I'm taking 5 minutes to explain this. So what I'm doing with my students that's working well, I don't know if I should say this, like it's in my PhD, but I didn't publish this. So go on, steal it from me. It's okay.
We've got video evidence of you saying it before anyone else.
Exactly. Thank you, Alistair. So I was trying to tell my students to use cinema typical scene. This is why we ended up with a game at GDC this year with students that made a hand car, Western cowboy, kind of stuff, and this cooperative game with 2 players playing on a hand car, because this is what I told them to do: take scenes from movies and try to essentialize what's fun in it. Why did the director choose to represent stuff that way? And we had also this game about the heist in the casino, and this is how we ended up with this. What's happening is that it's just more confusing way for me to tell them to essentialize a situation, which is kind of the same as saying, what is a children's take on this? Because when we try to represent, like you have a few seconds in a movie to say, this is stock trading, what will you show? Well, a bunch of people screaming in the phone. So you end up with the same stuff. And playing by cell and talking with you was like a big jump in my PhD. So thanks a lot for that. I don't have much more to say, but that's awesome.
No, that's great. Yeah.
But yeah, maybe we should wrap up the interview, Alistair, and finish with Number Cruncher. We started with it, we'll end with it. So this is the second game you bring at the GDC, Danny, this year, of course. And yeah, I mean, how the it was made for the what festival, the last
Yeah,
one,
it was
I think.
made for the
Yeah.
What Festival in 2021, although we didn't end up using it until, I mean, we kind of did, but the big idea was we wanted a fake currency for the festival because everybody had been talking about NFTs and cryptocurrency, and it kind of drives me crazy because I think that everybody is trying to find ways to make that, you know, work in video games, and I think that's the wrong way to go about it. You should be like, oh, this tool actually works for this, not like, how can we cram this into games in order to get more money out of people? So yeah, Number Cruncher became this sort of like, basically the whole idea came to me on the bus ride to work one morning. I was like, okay, it's like a game where you are using your body and like kind of a DDR controller to solve math problems. And then you have to mine the currency out of a rock, and then it poops the currency out of the machine. And then, and we just like, it was one of those scenarios where nobody said no. Like you have a brainstorming session and they talk about the rule. They're like, yeah, every good idea is the right idea. Yes, and always yes, and we yes anded that idea into just this insane thing, right? This like, I feel like as I was building it, every single time I'd get to some new stage of it, I'd be like, God, I can't believe we didn't cut this idea out of the game, because this is going to take me like 5 hours to make a giant mouth that is a button and eyeballs, or like to make a stomach that you punch and it churns out, or like now I'm like, oh, I have to build this whole coin ejection system that poops out coins out of this intestinal tract. It's just like, there really is no point where we said don't do the idea. But to the thematic notion of it, it's just like, I love all these pictures of this. It's just this, it's kind of like, what if kids were supposed to talk about cryptocurrency? Or like, what if we were like, here kids, this is how cryptocurrency, you know, you start to see like world economies get shifted over to this pyramid scheme, and you're like, well, we have to teach kids how it works. So it's like a monster that you serve, it does math in its brain, and after it does a lot of work and energy, it poops out fake money that people use to pay for their houses. And it's like, what are we doing? What is this thing? I don't know. And it was, yeah, I don't really know what Number Cruncher. I keep looking over at it because it's literally just over there. Its creepy mouth and teeth are just, you know, over there just staring at me. All of it's just like never ending intimidation of that thing. But yeah, the game was a real trip to build. And it was definitely the most ambitious, like physical alt control build that I'd ever done. It just had a lot of moving pieces. And the fact that it worked and we got it to San Francisco kind of also baffles me. But yeah, it was a fun project.
I mean, there's
Sounds
a lot
like
of...
yeah, go on, Alistair.
Yeah, no, it's just, there's a lot of interesting moving parts in there. Like, you know, so you've got the things, people are stamping on stuff, people are punching stuff, you know, you've got the hinge and the jaw. Like, there's so many things that could, you know, fall apart. I mean, did it survive all the way through GDC? Did you need to replace parts? Like, how did it survive?
Yeah, I mean, we were building the plane as we flew it, so to speak. Underneath the table there in that video, I mean, there's just like a bin full of tools and wiring and all of the things that I was constantly sort of tearing it down and repairing. We had huge problems with static electricity, which I had never really thought would be an issue with the game, but like, because people's bodies are moving and all of the fabric and everything is building up static, and then that would shock a microcontroller and restart it.
Wow.
So we had to deal with a bunch of interesting grounding stuff. The punching bag sensor, that actually kept being a problem because it was on carpet and it's a plastic thing, and static would build up and then it would ground out through the sensor and it would shock the sensor and shut the whole thing down. So it took the whole 3 days of alt control GDC to actually get the thing to where it wouldn't just turn off every hour or something like that. So yeah, it was a fun adventure. It now works really well, which is great. You know, you don't think like, I think the best place for me to demo this will be, you know, at a major international convention. But yeah, like it worked out. It definitely survived better than I thought. Honestly, I thought the thing that would break would be the foot pad, because people were jumping on it and stomping on it. Those have held up surprisingly well. And that's basically just built on somebody's do-it-yourself DDR controller instructable that I found online, and then just adapted it to be a circular number pad. Yeah.
As we are talking about the inner workings of number cruncher, I think it's a good transition to the show and tell, because we can actually show, you can, Danny, actually show what we are talking
Definitely.
about. I don't know, but
Yeah.
Alistair, or I can say it actually, but maybe it's time for us to also launch the creative game.
Yeah.
So people
I
give
can
us
get that
words.
started
Okay.
now. There we go.
And then we can look at the inside of number cruncher.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. What's the best way for me to do this? I think probably that.
Yeah.
I'm just
So
while you're figuring it
Danny's
out,
exactly. Go on.
while I'm figuring out how to move the cameras around, I will explain to the audience
Exactly.
the game that we're going to play at the end of the show. So while you are showing us all of this stuff, the audience are welcome to type into chat. If they type an exclamation mark followed by a word, then that word will be added to a pool of objects. What are we going to do with this pool of objects? At the end of the show, we are going to choose 5 random objects from that pool, and Danny is going to have to come up with an idea for a new game or a new controller made using those objects. So if you want to see him come up with a game about potato, type in exclamation mark potato, and a potato will be added to the pot like some kind of beautiful idea soup. So feel free to get typing away. That's exclamation mark followed by whatever it is you want to add to his controller. And
Exciting.
the audience,
yeah,
you can all do that
we
while
can
we're
move
having a
on
look.
the show and tell. Yeah.
All right. So I'm just gonna walk over here with my webcam, and we can start
Cool.
pointing it at
So
some things.
you are in your workshop right now, lab.
I
You are
am.
in the
Yeah.
lab. Yeah.
So this is the What Lab, which is basically a closet under an auditorium that they put us in. There's not much going on here, but Number Cruncher is in here right now. So this is the main body of Number Cruncher. I don't know how much of this we can see. Let me put my computer down just so I can point this camera thing. This is a little bright. I can probably turn this light off, but basically the intestines of this will kind of poop out a coin, and the mechanics of that coin pooping device are basically back. Oh God. I'm coming back. Hold on.
Yeah, no
promise.
problem. Obviously,
There it is.
like it got unplugged or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So back here, there's basically a kind of a tube ejection system that spits out these coins. And we've added this feature since you saw it at GDC, Tatiana, where basically instead of it falling out quickly, it poops out and sort of rolls really slowly down there, which is pretty nice. But basically, as people play the game, that happens and that triggers that. And then this guy, the actual number pads, basically are just kind of these like foil. Let's see if I can pull one of them up. These foil switches here.
Right.
It's handmade
on the
pressure plates.
underside of the button, yeah, this is all that. And then the spring is just these pieces of foam rubber that are in here that are just cut to pad, and then basically that closes a switch when somebody steps on that.
I'm amazed at how resilient that is. Like that, I mean, it must be a real like, you know, I think like, yeah, because I mean, in a previous show we spoke to Remy Soyer, a French developer who's talking about the many iterations of foot pedals that he'd been through.
Oh man.
And you know, and very few of them, you know, would last, you know, a session, especially when kids were involved.
Yeah, it's pretty rare, and I mean, I've had my fair share of like kids destroy my work, which I think is probably why I've gotten to where a lot of this is a lot more durable than it used to be. You know, it's so many students, when you see them build stuff, they'll just put something like wires are just plugged in or like taped to something, and then they just sort of stick that in there, and you have to be like, no, we have to use connectors on here, we have to do that. And yeah, it really makes for kind of a fun, you know, lesson to learn. But yeah, those buttons really did hold up really well. And yeah, on top of them, they're just mixed density fiberboard and a piece of acrylic that are kind of screwed together. So the buttons have a fair amount of kind of reinforcement to them. But yeah, the inside of it is just foil and like adhesive spray, and they're just kind of cut apart. That's actually the same, that inspiration also, it comes from a tutorial I watched, but also that's the way that telephone buttons work too. They use that same sort of comb switch mechanism that basically something presses down on top of it. So it's kind of another reference to that. The jaw itself, the beast, the actual mechanism for that, I guess I can show that as well.
Yeah, I'm going to just quickly see if I can do a bit of
change the view.
There we go, just so you're a bit bigger. There we go.
Here I am. I'm flying into a TV. Yeah. So basically this jaw is just a dental model that we found on Amazon.
Right.
And hinged it, and kind of behind there is just a springed armature that basically is pressing an arcade button. So at its core, that jaw is just a button that's normally open and closed. And then the eyeballs are just googly eyes that are actually just, once again, arcade buttons. So this isn't a very sophisticated control mechanism at the underside of it. It is just buttons. But it goes to show how far fur and googly eyes can go to enhancing the feel of a particular game experience, which is kind of fun.
Well, it is
because if you didn't have that, go ahead.
Well, no, it's interesting just how much how much mileage you get out of finding a way to hide all the parts, and if the parts, if you can't see that the parts are simple, the parts look incredibly polished, incredibly professional. I mean, that puppet work is a very a very good piece of construction, and it's it's solid. It's got a nice strong spring on it. I mean, I understand that you've done some work because you've designed sets for TED Talks and things like that. And is that where that background and experience comes into games for you?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think a lot of it, comes into, I teach fabrication here is the other thing that I teach. So I teach classes on basically shop, like wood shop and metal shop. And, that's a huge part of my background too, both in farm work. You build a lot of things when you work on a farm, and a lot of that has to last elements and animals and, all of the things that they undergo. And then, set design in terms of theater and construction. And then also I do a fair amount of kind of like freelance building and construction. And I have a really, the only house I could afford, which was basically falling apart. So I've been kind of rebuilding that from the inside since we got it. And it's just, So making things is a huge part of my process, like just the physicality of constructing. And to me, you could tell students like, hey, we're going to learn how to build a chair or something, which would be a fine way to learn woodworking skills. But it's a lot more engaging, particularly for the students in our program who are multidisciplinary and very technology focused, to say, you're going to learn some fabrication skills through the construction of a game controller. They get a lot more excited about that sort of application. So the physical building of high quality things, I think, is a big, it's taken me a long time how to figure out how to do it, but I realized that actually students need to learn that too. They really need to understand the physicality of it. So that's something that I've been really happy to try and integrate and have people try. It's been cool.
And what was it like working with the fabric?
Yeah, I mean, it's everywhere. That fabric, when you cut it, the Muppet fur just gets all over you, and it's like in every nook and cranny of this office right now. And but it was amazing to me. So initially the game didn't have that. I mean, in that initial video, it was just a machine sort of thing. And then at some point I just woke up one morning and was like, googly eyes. There should be eyeballs on the thing. There needs to be eyeballs on it. And we just started sticking eyeballs to things. And next thing I knew, I was like, oh, actually the whole thing is a creature. Oh, actually the whole thing is a creature that you you beat and make to suffer in order to generate currency, right? And that sort of like the game has been guided by that sort of, the fur gave a personality to a television that ended up reshaping the entirety of the game. We basically rebuilt it for GDC as like a living creature. I redid all of the art and assets just to make that happen. So yeah.
That's fascinating. I mean, I've had a similar experience with the Shredder in the book Ritual, where it was, you know, I was having some kind of like narrative problem with the writing inside of it, and you know, it didn't feel like it was connecting. And my brother was like, "Add googly eyes to the Shredder," which sounds like a silly idea, but actually, once the Shredder had googly eyes, it was much more obvious. Oh, the Shredder's a character. And now there's someone to talk to, and it transformed the whole thing. It's amazing what googly eyes can do.
It is true. I will always say googly eyes all the way, definitely.
Yeah, it's there is this. I didn't experience it myself, but apparently people that got interviewed by Muppets, like on the Muppet Show, usually very quickly forget about the technician. So they talk directly to the Muppet. The problem is the technician is the one that will answer. So you have a bit to, well, talk to this person. And I don't know why I didn't study this, but apparently the brain, the human brain is so much focused on what feels human or animal that these people, they know there is a technician, but they still talk to the Muppet very quickly. So yeah, hardwired. There are something hardwired here.
For sure. Yeah, eyeballs. People want a pair of eyeballs to look at with a game. I think a lot of the time they're like, as soon as they have that, you know, they're just like, oh, this thing is my friend. It's amazing how simple, how childlike we are in our minds. That we're like, well, there's eyeballs on it, so it's a friend. It's my friend now. But it definitely works, and it's been amazing to see how people interact with this grotesque sort of eyeball teeth creature covered in fur, but they still seem to really have an affinity for it. So yeah, some good words in this chat.
We have plenty of words.
We have a lot of good words. Yes.
Yeah.
Do we want to move on to the game?
Sounds good to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press a little button on the keyboard, and it is going to reveal on the screen a series of objects suggested by the audience. What will they be? We shall find out in 3, 2, 1. So we've got guinea pigs, a towel, Muppet fur, dental floss, and a marker pen. So that's guinea pigs, a towel, Muppet fur, dental floss, and a marker pen. So what do you think you'd make out of
use them all?
If you can.
As much as possible. And you
Okay,
you can add whatever you want.
The first thing that comes to mind is some sort of like generative art obstacle course where you use guinea pigs to produce some sort of like artistic artifact. Basically, you have like guinea pigs with little harnesses made out of dental floss, and they're pulling behind them markers across a canvas as you're working through. The Muppet fur is hard to integrate because the guinea pigs already feel like they're covered in Muppet fur, but I suppose you could do something where maybe the guinea pigs are producing some sort of creature that's going to be made out of Muppet fur. So you then take whatever the artistic creation artifact is that the guinea pigs have drawn, and then you basically run some computer magic on it and turn it into let's say some sort of player avatar that you use in some sort of battle environment in a game. And of course it has googly eyes on it and it's made out of Muppet fur. That's the first thing I can add what that is.
That's actually very good. I mean, it makes sense. Like, it's playable. Weirdly,
everybody bets on one of the guinea pigs to produce an actual drawing, and everybody has to use whatever their guinea pig drew to actually play the game. I don't know.
Is there a way that you interact with the guinea pigs, or do you just leave them to roam around of their own accord, or do you are you supposed to coax them to different parts? Like how much creative control should a guinea pig owner have over?
Well, yeah, I guess perhaps maybe the Muppet fur comes in a situation where people are dressed in Muppet fur trying to look like guinea pigs, and they're trying to communicate and influence the behavior of the guinea pigs while they wear their kind of like Muppet fur suits in order to also, the humans are guinea pigs and the guinea pigs are doing the art. That feels like a win right there, actually. That's a good one.
Sounds fantastic. I mean, even if I think even if it's just an excuse to get humans to dress up as guinea pigs, and you say, oh yeah, no, it's art. It's like...
Then it's a win for sure.
Yeah.
The people invading my land, no worries.
And then I guess if you can take photographs of the people in the guinea pig suits and, auction them as art as well as the guinea pig drawings and have a competition over which goes for more money.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, then we finally figured out how to help alt-control creators make money with their games, which is what we're all trying to do anyway.
Yeah. Well, I'll get on the phone to the guinea pig people.
Yeah. We'll see if we can get clearance to use guinea. I mean, we have to make it humane, but yeah, I think we can get it done.
Yeah. That was fantastic. And also, I have to say, out of all of the creators we've had on, I think that's been the fastest response we've had so far.
Yeah, exactly. And super well working. Like, it makes sense. It's weird, but it makes some sort of sense. Like, we can see what's happening. So it's impressive, actually. Of course, there is the random Joe that makes things changing, but no, like, kudos for the level of creativity. Really.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I have nothing but ridiculous ideas that I can make up on the spot. I don't know. Execution is where most of those things suffer, but yeah, we can always come up with ridiculous ideas in the use of animals. So yeah.
Okay, you're an expert in this. Okay.
Cool.
Well, thanks a lot, Danny. Thanks so much.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thank you all so much for having me. This was really fun.
Thanks for coming on.
Well,
is there anything else that you'd like to add before we head off? Where can people find out about you and things like that?
Yeah, so I mean, the big things to check out are just kind of keeping in touch with the What Festival, which is just if you go to what.io, WHAAAT.io, we'll be doing some events, be they virtual or in person, depending on scheduling. But the festival hopefully will be coming back, maybe not fall, but next spring. And we'll be doing some game jams and some other sort of one-off events in between there. So people can find us there, or What Festival on Twitter, or you can follow me on Twitter, Danny Rankin. And if people find me there, then I'll inevitably at least say, this is a thing that's happening, usually the day that it's about to start. But yeah, internet. Woo.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming along. And of course, thank you all of our viewers for coming along, for watching, and for joining in. Beyond Screens takes place every Wednesday here on the Indiecade channel. It features the creators of playable theatre, escape rooms, and many more things, including ourselves on alternative controllers. So please do come along every Wednesday, because it is always a fascinating discussion. And that's not all for today's viewing, because we have more Indiecade shows coming up at 3 o'clock. We will have Korean Drive Time, playing some brand new games, and of course there are plenty more Indiecade shows here on this channel going on through the week.
And of course, thank you so much, Danny, for joining us. It's been fantastic to have you here. Thanks again.
Great. Thanks for having me.
And thanks very much, Tatiana, for another fantastic show.
Thanks, Alistair. Goodbye, everyone. See you all again soon. Bye.
All right. Bye, everyone. Bye.